Hello! Welcome to the Public News Special, Storytime with Chris Crystal, myself, Harvey Smooth, and Preston. Brought to you by Spicy Armadillo Salsa. It even burns Nicolas Cage's tongue. Here we present to you the breaking story of what was in that old medieval book found in the University of Rochester, New York. Take it away, Harvey.
Yes, today we tell you a story like no other. The story of Sir Argalot of Xanthia, the unknown knights of the Round Table.
I feel like this is truly a magnificent story. Without further ado, I present to you the Arthurian legend of Sir Argalot of Xanthia, written by Thomas Mallory.
We begin in the medieval period, which dated from about 500 to 1300. This story begins in 1085. In the small unknown village of Xanthia in eastern England, there lived a poor family named the Argalots. Under the system of feudalism,
I will now provide a definition for the youngins who may not know what feudalism is. Feudalism was a Frankish practice of giving land to nobles in exchange for loyalty and military service.
also, feudalism proved to be extremely one-sided because the serf, or extremely lowest class in terms, still didn't benefit because they were basically giving up all their money to the king so that he could give the land to the people who served for the king. And the king was gaining lots of money in the process.
Now, the Argalots were a small family, obviously, in the county or town of Xanthia, and they worked their behinds off just to survive because they're giving lots of food and money to the king. The Argalots' first 3 children died of disease, but their next 2, they survived, thankfully. And they survived.
Of course, the Argalots were some of the most uneducated people around. They had no idea that living with pigs was unsanitary. But enough about them. This story is about the other child that survived.
What a miracle he was! Right when he was born, his parents knew he would go on to be something important. They named him Cornelius Argalot, and he grew up healthy, never even falling to one illness. He would not inherit the land, among other things, because of primogeniture, which was the rule that the oldest born male would inherit the land.
At the age of 4, Cornelius, or Neil as they called him, was already working in the fields. He was extremely strong, and his father was absolutely befuddled by his strength. The son was lifting and chopping wood like a mighty lumberjack.
He was
a true prodigy, kind of like me when I was young, playing jazz flute.
Quite the charmer you were, Preston. Anyways, Neil grew up to be literate and extremely strong with no training whatsoever. He also had a best friend next door named Muriel. Every time there was a break in work, the two would play tag and talk. They were best friends without a doubt, and when Neil started taking an interest in girls, he began to fall for her.
Alas! But tragedy struck, and Muriel came to the door one day saying her family was making a pilgrimage. Neil tried to persuade her to stay, but there was nothing he could do. Apparently her family wanted to leave the land because of the Crusades.
Muriel's family was Catholic, but religious soldiers were marching all around and the conflict became too much. Neil swore he would find them once again, wherever they may go.
At the age of 24, Neil began to understand what his purpose was. He had to use his wits and strength to reunite with her, and eventually to do it for the good of the land. And
that he did. He bid farewell to his parents one dark night and rode off for Camelot, where he hoped he could try and become a knight. He knew this was a great risk to leave his land under the law of feudalism, which was described before by Preston. He stole a horse and rode for many days and nights, hiding from nobles who tried to stop him.
He arrived at Camelot, ready to confront the famous knights of the Round Table. He had actually never been told about them. But his instincts were so strong that he knew they were there.
He was set up from birth to become a hero, wasn't he?
You could say so, but he sure was surprised at the land he saw before him. He had never seen buildings and structures like this before in Xanthia.
He stuck out like a sore thumb in Camelot. He considered going back to Xanthia, never afraid of what the consequences might be.
But in the end, he decided against that. He could see the castle protruding from the ground about a mile away. It was bigger than a football stadium.
He rode up to the Barbican.
Definition time. A barbican was the gateway or outworks that defended the drawbridge.
Yes. He rode up and decided that it would be risky and noticeable if he went in through the front. He would be caught immediately and killed under the circumstances.
He actually rode in through the postern gate.
Another definition. The postern gate was a side or less important gate to the castle, usually for peacetime used for the pedestrians.
Enough definitions, please, Preston. So he went in and snuck and and snuck around to the inside of the castle. He found the knights and sat down, hoping they would be friendly.
I hope to become a knight of this round table. What does it take to be in this prized group? Said Argolat.
The knights laughed and said, "You, a knight of the round table? You are too short, too fat, and too slow. Good luck, sir."
The knights didn't know Argolat's power within, so the wannabe knight picked up a bale of hay and threw it the length of half a football field.
Wow, they exclaimed. If you can raise them in the ranks of knighthood, then you shall join us on this elite squad. Argolat agreed with joy, but with the exception that King Arthur didn't know he was there.
And with that, Argolat began months of training and hiding. First, he was a page. He helped out the other knights and in minor ways by putting on their armor, among other things. He recorded things for them and spent his own time with basic training.
After he became skilled, he became a squire and started accompanying the other knights in battle. He handed them weapons and wore the heavy armor. He started riding horses and learning the advanced skills for the job.
He accompanied them on multiple occasions, including the famous battle of Brunabruch.
I believe...
Brunabruch?
Yes.
Brunabruch?
Go.
Where the knights assaulted the Saxon king. How's that pronounced?
Athelstan?
Athelstan.
Brunanburh.
And Athelstan. How now, Bronco? All right, all good. Against the Scottish and allies. He was a huge help in battle, proving his worth by fending off 1,000 men and being a major factor.
There was no way King Arthur wouldn't hear about this. Neil was presented to him and was knighted. He had proven loyal to the rules of chivalry, which included morals of courtesy, generosity, valor, and dexterity in arms.
Dexterity, Preston.
Dexterity.
Congratulations, my young warrior. You now deserve the famed knighthood from the Knights of the Round Table, King Arthur said. To prove yourself in this position you have earned, I present you with a quest. The Crusades led by Peter the Hermit have wreaked havoc. They are ransacking villages and killing people that may or may not be Catholic. Your job is to find Peter and take him down.
Neil immediately thought of Muriel. If he saw his beloved mate again, his heart would be at rest. Of course, Neil exclaimed with glee. Take Sir Farquaad with you.
And with that, the two set off on the journey. The two were not well acquainted, but Sir Argolat was so charming that it did not take much to befriend him. Remember, as a knight, we focus on our mission, not private connections. King Arthur also said not to save anyone that is not a Catholic.
Sir Farquaad said. Neil's heart sunk. He could not believe this. He would have to figure out a way to see Muriel. Thankfully, she was Catholic, not Jewish. He could easily figure out a way around the rules.
Farquaad said, "Never mind, it's getting late and we have rode all day. Let's find a place to stay for the night."
They rode for a little while longer, and then they came upon the famous St. Benedict Monastery, which had been established over 500 years earlier.
The two were absolutely delighted, and they arrived questioning for a place to stay. The monks were very generous and did allow them to stay, along with a tour of the facility.
The guide led them through the halls, and the two were amazed at how the other monks were so quiet and peaceful.
The monks said, "At any monastery, we monks take our job quite seriously, and we incorporate the importance of the church in our daily lives. As you may know, the church owns 1/3 of the land in Europe, and we acknowledge the fact by becoming monks.
Our monastery is made up of granaries, breweries, bakeries, a hospital, a school, and many other buildings. They provide aid to those who need it, and the art we display helps to show what Christ has done for us, even when people cannot read," the monk finished.
"I can read," said Neil. Farquaad was boiling inside because he could not, and ever since Sir Argolat started his training, it seemed he was only one-upping everybody. "Nobody cares," screamed Farquaad.
Geez, Farquaad is quite the saucy fellow. Neil jumped back and could feel Farquaad's bitterness centered on him. He could feel something bad about him.
The monk eased the tension. Gentlemen do not fight in the presence of God. He had given us so much refuge in these tough times. We are so lucky the church is as important as the king because the government is corrupt. If you could actually resolve the conflict between Pope Gregory VII and King Henry IV, that would be much obliged. We will repay you. But what are you here for anyways?
We are here to stay before we begin our adventure to find and save towns under attack from Peter the Hermit.
The Pope declared, Well, if you need to know about the Crusades and the pilgrimage, have no fear. In our library, I have Geoffrey Chaucer's tale, The Canterbury Tales.
That is just what we need, said Neil. I will read this tonight. Farquaad only grew angrier and angrier at Neil's stunning qualities.
That night, while Farquaad slept, Neil stayed up and read the lengthy tale with his unbeatable brain power. The next morning, Sir Argolat woke Farquaad up, thanked the monks, and continued to go to Jerusalem and Rome, where he hoped Peter's army would be, and possibly Muriel.
They zoomed through the land, but Sir Argolat was still suspicious of Farquaad. After a few days and some sieging of enemy castles on the way, which only created more tension, they arrived to Gregory and Henry.
Henry, by order of the Benedictine monks, leave the Pope to do as he wishes. Let him take more power as religion takes precedence, Argolat explained.
The king fought back. I am the king. I decide what happens. It took days, but Argolat used his cunning smarts to trick Henry into giving the people what he wanted.
Then Argolat and Farquaad continued and arrived at Jerusalem. Egods, man, we have made it. I have a plan. I will sneak past Peter's guards into the town and save the Catholic people. I will take one guard out and take his outfit to use it as a disguise.
Farquaad explained that he would keep watch. Argolat snuck up behind, and with his swift punch, he knocked out a guard through the armor. He stole the suit and crept into the town. It seemed as if everything was under lockdown.
Neil whispered to groups of people to prepare to leave once he started commotion. He accidentally stumbled upon a Jewish home and realized Muriel was there.
Cornelius! She embraced him, and Neil was so shocked. I thought you were Catholic. That's who I am saving.
Muriel was saddened. We converted secretly when we came here. Does it matter to you? My parents died as well.
Neil thought for what he would do, but he just kissed her. And alone in that house, he knew he loved her. Then guards broke in with Farquaad behind them.
Neil yelled, "What are you doing, Farquaad?" Farquaad only replied with a, "Don't you mean Peter the Hermit? I was in disguise the whole time. Prepare to die, Argolat."
Neil lunged forward and with a sweep of his arm knocked down 12 guards at once. Peter jumped back and Neil shoved Muriel forward to safety. He fended off all the guards, eventually laying them all out on the ground. Peter stood on the battlefield as the final foe.
The two met, and Peter said one final thing to Neil. "They will never believe you. You will go down as killing an honorable knight." Neil replied, "Anything for justice." Then they duked it out. The swords clashed, and from what the story says, they fought for hours, but Neil had the upper hand.
By using his wits and strength, he threw Peter's sword to the side and stabbed him in the leg. He buried his sword in his chest and left, knowing his job as a knight of the Round Table was over. He took Muriel in his arms, crying, but accepted her even with her new religion.
It was a risky thing to do, but it does prove that love conquers all. They rode away, and Argolat was seen as a traitor. However, the monks did keep their word, and they wrote of his heroics, which is how Argolat has come to be known by.
Once again, this was a great story, and we thank you for stopping by Public News Storytime, sponsored by Spicy Armadillo Salsas.
What a joyous occasion it was.
Goodbye, and we hope to see you next week. Public News, do.
Once again, Public News Storytime is brought to you by the fabulous sponsors of Spicy Armadillo Salsa. Not just salsa, they make guacamole, cheesy salsa, and ridiculously spicy salsa. Ah!